My name is Barry Loveland, and I use pronouns he, him, his. And I'm here on behalf of the LGBT Center of Central Pennsylvania History Project. Today's date is March 25th, 2022, and we're here for an oral history interview with Salem Colbalt. This interview is taking place over Zoom. And Salem, do we have your permission to record the interview today?
You do.
Great, thank you. And as I mentioned before, we have a consent form for you to look over and sign at the end of the interview when we're done. So the first thing is, could you say and spell your full name and give your preferred pronouns?
Of course. It's Salem Colbalt, Salem Cobalt, and I go by he, him, his.
Okay, great. And what is your date of birth and where were you born?
April 21st, 1988, and I was born in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania.
Okay. What I'd like you to do is start by talking about your family of origin and sort of the story of you growing up in that family, and if you had siblings, parents, things like that. Talk a little bit about them and beginning of school and things like that.
Sure. So, my name is Salem, and some folks might be like, oh, that's a cool name. It's like the place where they used to burn witches. The origin of that actually kind of comes from my parents' background. So my mom is from the States. She's from Pennsylvania out towards Pittsburgh. Her family's been there for a few generations. My dad, on the other hand, is from Libya, Northern Africa. And he came over here for college when he was quite young, met my mom, had 3 kids, me being the middle one. And they went with names for all 3 of us kids that were really not cross-generational, but cross-cultural. So Salem, if I'm in the US, Salam, meaning peace, if I'm overseas in the Middle East. Kind of clever. So 2 different parents, 2 different, very different sort of origin stories for them. It was really interesting as a kid, having that like very diverse cultural background. I've never really thought of myself as anyone but just kid from Pennsylvania. But I suppose that had a profound impact on how myself and my brothers grew up. So born and raised in the Northeast Pennsylvania, moved down to Harrisburg when we were I was just starting middle school. Moved down there to the Colonial Park area. It was around that time, sixth grade going on to 7th grade, that we made the move. And I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but that's around when I started to feel like, something's a bit different. And I didn't talk to anyone about it. It was just something I just sort of kept real suppressed down deep. But that's right around puberty and right around when, as a gay man, those sorts of things start to become more apparent. So going through middle school, things were pretty typical. And then once high school sort of rolled around, that's about the time when I started to put 2 and 2 together that, oh gosh, I don't have the same feelings like television says I'm supposed to be having. Oh my God, I might be gay. Oh my God, I might be gay, and how are my parents going to respond to that sort of thing? I was terrified, like beyond belief. In the Middle East, in some parts at least, if you're gay, you're either thrown in jail, beaten, or executed. And from what I understood in Libyan culture, it might not be something you're executed for, but essentially being gay was one of the worst most shameful things you could possibly bring upon your family. It's very family centered. It's, in fact, how your family perceives you is more important than most other things. So started high school, had this growing fear sort of like lingering over me. And I didn't have anyone at the time. I didn't have anyone I either trusted or felt safe enough to come out to. Like I literally had nobody in school. I didn't know a single person who was gay, lesbian, transgendered, at least anyone who was out and open at the time. And you know, as a kid, that takes a heavy toll on you. I was depressed, like you wouldn't believe. It was very isolating. And you know, going through 9th grade, and then I want to say going into 10th grade, you know, that fear just kept growing and growing and growing inside of me. What if my parents found out that I was gay? What if, oh my gosh, like am I going to get disowned? Am I going to get kicked out of the house? Whatever was going to happen, I just knew it was not going to be good. And I don't have the exact like date, but I know sometime between 9th and 10th grade, that was around the time when I finally sort of accepted that this is just who I am, and I need to connect with other people. I can't possibly be the only person in central Pennsylvania that's gay. So went on the computer, did some Googling, and I discovered that there was this youth group called Common Roads. Must be a cult or something. You know, I lived in the suburbs, so the fact that Common Roads was meeting in downtown Harrisburg, like even just that much was kind of scary for me. And so I wish I had like the exact date. I went to my first Common Roads Friday night meetup, if you want to call it that, but it was the most amazing breath of fresh air I've ever had growing up. To like, and you know, I was probably just a quiet kid in the corner, just sort of listening to whatever that night's topic or focal point was. I can't remember, but I just remember I was in awe, like, oh my gosh, there's others like me that are just people, just talking about what they're going through, what's going on in their lives. I know it was such a pain to get downtown. Didn't drive, didn't have, like, I think I might have biked over there a few times. I know I've walked at least once. Oh, my older brother, Dean. So he dropped me off a lot of times when I started attending at least semi-regularly on Fridays. He didn't know I was gay at the time, but he knew that whatever I was doing downtown was really important to me. Didn't tell my parents what I was doing, where I was going, but he was an incredibly huge, vital support for me early on. And honestly, that's probably the reason why I was able to go as frequently as I did, because I had one of my older brothers, you know, he was looking after for me. So Common Roads, pretty early on, they moved to their new location on Front Street. I honestly can't remember where their old one was, other than I think it was just down the road or up the road from their new spot. But new space, same really loving, accepting group of folks. I remember like meeting Michelle Simmons for the first time, like just such an amazing, phenomenal, like fabulous person to just talk with. And I remember Melinda is another one of the really early, super influential leaders of Common Roads. So I was attending fairly regularly, and my mom started to ask questions like, where was I going? What was I doing? I think this is probably towards my junior year. Starting to get into my senior year of high school. And that was around the point when I decided I need to come out to my parents. Like this feeling of dread was killing me. I was so depressed. And I knew whatever was going to happen wouldn't be good. But I didn't think I'd actually like, I didn't think I'd actually still be alive if I could. I was so depressed, I probably would have killed myself if I hadn't had a support network like Common Roads, had really influential role models like Michelle and Linda. I probably would not be alive today. So, and of course, like I'm talking with everyone there every time, you know, just how shitty things are at home, how my parents just think I'm, you know, just being a rebellious kid. My grades are tanking. You know, things were shitty, but like my parents didn't know why they were shitty. And it was between my junior and senior years of high school, I finally decided now's the time to finally come out to my parents, but not just come out to them. Like I absolutely did not feel safe just telling them I'm gay. I had to have like a moderator. So with some convincing, I had my mom find me a psychologist, and I was going through therapy pretty regularly. And this is just, you know, one-on-one therapy. It wasn't with my mom. Literally the very first therapy session, you know, door closes, I'm gay. And I am so terrified what my parents are going to do about that. Very first therapy session. So that whole series of sessions was really just trying to prepare me mentally with what's going to happen next. I can't remember how many sessions we did, but probably a month or two at least. And finally, we decided, the therapist and I, we do a group session. It would be both my parents, my mom, my dad, my older brother, but not yet my younger brother. And that was actually a very critical thing in hindsight. My younger brother, you know, he's both older and younger. They're a few years older and younger than me, not too far, but I wanted to make sure that, you know, if my younger brother somehow, some way turned out to be gay, I would not actually be the one to blame for it. I know that sounds crazy, but that's the dark sort of trains of thoughts that I was going through at this time. So we do a group therapy session. We'd have the therapist there to help moderate, help make sure that whatever happened was done safely, and hopefully talk some sense into my parents. The day finally arrives. Tell my parents, you know, I have something to tell you. I'm gay. And it was just the silence, like this ungodly silence after that. And I think my dad said, oh, it might have been my mom. It was something along the lines of, are you sure? You know, maybe you just haven't met the right person yet. And my dad said something along the lines of, how dare you, I'm paraphrasing, but it was something like, how dare you bring this type of shame upon our family? Like, you terrible, terrible person, effectively. I'm sure there was some more colorful language at the time, but it was the most, it was about the worst case scenario that I had prepared myself for. Maybe just a hair better, but it was bad. My older brother, very first thing he said was, I fully support you. And I think once we were done with that session, when it was just my parents and the therapist in the room, I think he came in and gave me a hug. So he's been a huge support since day one. That was the beginning of my living hell. That was my life. Again, I'm 17, maybe, definitely at least a year out from graduation, from turning 18. This was the darkest period of my entire life, that little area. My parents, especially my dad, basically verbally abused me. It feels like every waking moment whenever I was at home. When I wasn't at school, it was just, I'm bringing shame upon the family. Like, you need to straighten up. Like, you need to straighten up. Like, this is not acceptable. Why are you doing this to your family? Just think about how other people are going to, like, what other people are going to think of us. Like, why are you bringing all this shame upon us all? Things got worse. I was still going to Common Roads at the time, and my mom sort of put two and two together. I think I told her, hey, it's an LGBTQ, Q, et cetera. It was a youth group. And that's what I told her. What she heard was, it's a cult that turns people gay, basically. And it got really nasty. I know that my mom and Michelle had a number of exchanges, and my mom effectively started to threaten Common Roads that, hey, she would sue the organization if they didn't start turning me away. The only outlet I had where I felt truly safe, truly accepted for who I was, and my mom was threatening them with like legal action. Of course, I don't know how serious she was actually, if this was just empty threats, but Common Roads stood by me. The only reason why I stopped going was because of the shit I was getting from my parents when I wasn't going there. And I was so depressed. I was in such a dark place. And at some point I stopped going. I stopped trying. Things got worse. I know I've had fights with both of my parents. I think with my mom, we were arguing, and I want to say, like, I never came to blows for anyone, but like all the way up to that line. I might have even like tried tackling my dad at some point outside. School, my senior year had already started around this time, and I didn't have Common Roads anymore, so I was using my guidance counselor at school basically as my only outlet. My parents stopped letting me go see my therapist. I had a few sessions after I came out where I was still able to attend, and then they pulled the plug on that. He was the reason why I was gay. He's the one putting these thoughts into my head. So my guidance counselor was my new therapist. I was probably in there almost every single day, crying. saying how I don't want to go home, how I basically am stuck in my room. I was afraid to go home every day. And I'm in school, like I was failing. I feel like I was failing pretty much every class I was taking. And I'm supposed to graduate, and this is the hellhole I'm trying to deal with. At some point, can't remember if it was the start of the new year or right, it was probably early 2006 at this point. Still wasn't 18 yet. I started exploring any potential legal options that I had. And I actually remember Curtis, I'm going to butcher his last name, but he was one of the volunteers for Common Roads. He's an attorney for like family matters, and Michelle put me in touch with him, etc. And we even looked at the emancipation option for a little bit to see, hey, could I just cut off ties with my parents, get out of that toxic environment, and start living my life. I was close to being 18. My birthday is in April. So at that point, given how close in proximity it was, it didn't make sense. I just have to sort of just stick to my guns and sort of deal with that just a little bit longer. I could not deal with it. I don't know what broke me, if I wasn't already very broken and by that point, but I was done. It's one day I was in school and I told my guidance counselor, like, I want to kill myself. I can't do this anymore. I think that was the same day that I did the stupidest thing I could have probably done at the time. Sorry, let me step back a second. Before coming out to some folks at school, at some point, things were just escalating so terribly with my parents. I think I just like pulled some clothes into a backpack, and I walked out the front door, and I called somebody. I'm like, I can't stay here. I have to crash somewhere else. Crashed at a few friends' places. I stayed with Melinda for a couple of nights at least. How one of my teachers at school even let me stay at his place for a few nights. Like that was the degree I was like, I'm borderline almost homeless. I'm fearful for my life, and I can't go home, and I don't have any other options. And that was about the point where I found I broke, and I was in the middle of choir practice. I've done all the jazz band, marching band. I was in choir since 7th, 8th grade. And one day I just completely broke, and I came out in front of the entire choir, probably 50 of us. I just said, I'm tired of your jokes. I'm tired of dealing with this. I'm gay. Deal with it. And I had my backpack on, just walked right out the door. Obviously, I just walked out the door in the middle of class. So I walked out the door and headed straight to the guidance counselor's office. Some people clapped. had some friends in class, and when I left, I could hear some of them were clapping. I don't know if it was that day, but if it wasn't, it was shortly thereafter. I walked into the guidance counselor's office and I said, I want to kill myself. I can't deal with this anymore. Obviously that led to another, one thing led to another, and I found myself at Fairhaven Hospital, basically under suicide watch for at least a week. So it was a very dark time. I went through outpatient therapy right after. And I want to say right after I was done basically with outpatient, that's about when I decided I'm a lost cause as far as graduating like a normal kid. I mean, that ship had sailed long ago, but I finally accepted that no matter what I did, no matter how hard I tried, there's no way I'm going to be able to graduate with the rest of my class of 2006. So I dropped out and I got my GED. You might be wondering, well, how do I go from like that sort of dark, like bottom of the barrel sort of situation where I'm, can't go home anymore. I've basically torpedoed a bunch of relationships at school. I'm dropping out of school. I've dropped out of high school. Like, what the hell do I do? That was my backup. That's when my backup plan kicked in. In November of, I want to say 2005, in the midst of all of this shit, I enlisted in the Pennsylvania Army National Guard. Because what else am I going to do to stabilize my life, to have a job, have just structure, to like just be supported in some way. Of course, with any of the armed forces, you don't ask, don't tell was still in place at that time. So I enlisted. I was only able to enlist with parental guardian approval, under the assumptions from them that, hey, Army's going to straighten out the boy. So dropped out of school, got my GED, and in June of 2006, shipped out to basic training at Fort Jackson, South Carolina for basic, and then about 4 months later, went off to advanced individual training at Fort Gordon, Georgia. So I was waiting for training for about a year. No one knew I was gay. No one knew how depressed I was. No one knew anything. It was just army, paychecks, and a lot of time to think. By the time I finally finished all my training, came back to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I went home once. My parents never attended any of my different graduation ceremonies. I ended up graduating basic training as, it's like 240 people. 4 people are leading all of the different groups of 60. So those 4 people aside, I ended up being top of my class, graduate with honors. Turns out when you have a lot of time to think for yourself, like just think, you get a lot of study time as well. That plus apparently marching band helps you do really great things in formation. Came back home. Parents didn't attend any of my graduation ceremonies. They never visited once. I stopped by home once as soon as I got back. and it was very, I don't even know if my dad was there. It might have been just my mom. It was very cold, it was polite, but it was very, there's a minimal of an interaction as you can imagine. That's kind of when I started living my own life as, a gay, almost 20-something-year-old living in central Pennsylvania. National Guard was still going on the side. It's 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks during the summer. I got a job in the Pennsylvania Department of State, working in their HR office. So I was a receptionist, filed papers. It's very terrible at my job, but I got a consistent paycheck from the state. I started going back to Common Roads. It was so weird, like spending a good amount of time away, and Army's not all good things, but as far as like kind of hardening parts of me and helping me sort of get a better grasp at what I need to do to support myself, it was really helpful, actually. Coming back to Common Roads after all of that was just, it was weird. I mean, it almost felt like I had graduated. I was now like well beyond just the early late mid to late teens sort of demographic they especially I think cater towards. But I did some volunteer work. I know we marched in a couple of the Summer Pride Festival parades. I was also involved in the Unitarian Universalist Church of Harrisburg throughout all this as well, because Catholic mom, Catholic side of her family, Muslim dad, Muslim side of his family, and huge disagreements on, well, what religion is my mom? Well, it depends on who you ask. Needless to say, like my religious beliefs were not, none of the above. So having the UU Church of Harrisburg was another sort of source of support and just love that I needed in my life. So I remember one of the prides was like marching with the UU Church's little marching band, and some folks in Common Roads had a booth and everything at the festival. And I'd graduated, but as an alum, almost just I felt a lot of gratitude and really just this like burning desire to just support the group and show just how much appreciation, just how different my life would have been if I was even still alive, if I didn't have that little glimmer of hope in suburban central Pennsylvania. I mean, I could keep going, but I don't know how far you want me to go with my backstory.
Yeah, I think continue if you want to. I mean, what
I can wrap up the last couple. So one of the alumni, well, not even alum, one of the volunteers at Common Roads, Curtis, now I'm going to attempt to say his last name. I'm going to butcher it, but Curtis was one of the volunteers. He was that attorney that helped me figure out if I could possibly get emancipated. He was also ultimately the one who helped me get discharged from the Army under Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So I served almost 4 years. I got out just a hair before my 4th year anniversary. Curtis was the one who introduced me to Juniata College. So I'm working in the Pennsylvania Department of State. I have an apartment downtown. I'm taking classes at Harrisburg Area Community College, just struggling to kind of get my life together. And Curtis, I think we had coffee after work one day downtown, and his alum was Juniata College, and I've always been a computers and technology guy, so my heart was set on computer science or something along those lines, even though I didn't think I had the smarts, the grades for it. But hearing about this school, Huntington, Pennsylvania, short drive away from State College, it seemed almost too good to be true. But he insisted. He's like, this college changed my life. I've made so many like lifetime friends there. It gave me something to actually work towards. So I really started to double down on my studies. And after a whole lot of back and forth with the admissions office, they finally said, I'm telling them my backstory up to this point. They finally told me, hey, if you can make these grades at Hack, you can come here. So I worked my butt off, and I have ADD, if you can't tell. So for someone who is unmedicated, untreated, not even like formally diagnosed at the time, sitting myself down to study and do homework and just like make the grades was not easy, but I did it. I got accepted to attend Juniata College in the spring of 2009. And I obviously didn't have any financial support from my parents after the huge fallout, and parents threatening me, my dad threatening to put a bullet in my head at some point. No financial support from them. So Hack classes can kind of afford on my own, some Stafford student loans here and there, but even I think a small grant from Common Roads, can't remember. Juniata College, as a private liberal arts school in the middle of the mountains, is not cheap. It's very, very, very pricey. And I was able to get some scholarships and grants through the school, some financial assistance, but I had to take out every possible personal student loan I possibly could just to be able to pay the tuition, get my meal plan, and pay for room and board for a semester. That was the most amazing school experience I've had in my entire life. Juniata is quite a ways away from Harrisburg, so I didn't have Common Roads, but that school had their own LGBT, I think they called it a club, but they had their own little made-up group. My advisor, her and her partner, who Curtis, I think, put me in touch with her. My advisor there, she was a lesbian, phenomenal woman. She was so supportive every step of the way I was there. She was also the one who helped put together that LGBT club on campus. That was how I made my first couple of gay friends. Was at school. My spring semester at Juniata College was amazing. I auditioned for the choir that they had there. There's the choir everyone can go to, and then there's you have to audition and be such and such good. I managed to get into that. We went to France for a week to go on tour. I think we had 7-8 concerts in about a week. Had a French host family. This is northern France, Lille. For a depressed shit show of a kid who dropped out of high school, had to get his GED, was kicked out of his house, this was like the best semester ever. I made so many friends that semester. And then came time to register for the next semester, fall 2009. And that's when that part of my life came to a close, because I couldn't find enough money to pay for the next semester. I tried every possible route to, like, even to try to find other folks who could possibly co-sign for me, but just couldn't make the numbers happen. So I even stuck around for most of, like, there's summer vacation. I don't have a place to go back in Harrisburg, so they had a science summer camp for kids. I was camp counselor there. They got room and board at the school. I used every resource and opportunity I could to make it last as long as I could, but I couldn't make it happen. So I did what any now devastated, just shattered kid would do, and I said, screw it, I'm gonna go move to California, because what else am I gonna do? So I packed up all my things into my car. I swung by my grandparents' house out in Western Pennsylvania, around Pittsburgh. Stayed there for like a night, and then 5 a.m. the next morning, I drove out to California. Well, started to. Pro tip: do not try to drive to California nonstop, no matter like how much caffeine you have, because that's dangerous. But I got all the way to Nebraska like the first day I was driving nonstop, and then slept a couple hours in the car, and finally made it out to Milpitas, north of San Jose, by around like 10 p.m. the next day. So 2 complete days of driving, 4 hours in Nebraska, basically only stopping to use the bathroom and fill up gas. California was amazing. I still miss it sometimes, but you need a stable income. California is extremely competitive as far as the job market goes. And Mr. I don't have a degree, what am I going to do? How do I compete with all these other folks trying to get the same jobs? Just it didn't last. But I made some lifetime friends when I was out there. Same thing with my time at Juniata College. But every opportunity, every situation, one door closes, another door opens. And towards the end of 2009, that was when I started chatting online on this new website called OkCupid. All the kids my age were on. That's where I met my partner and husband, James. Because you can answer a lot of questions, get a pretty high score match, and apparently there's enough crazy folks like me and him out there that it doesn't matter that we're on opposite sides of the country. I was in Silicon Valley, he was up here in Boston. For the right opportunity, to crazy enough, that sort of distance doesn't matter. So January 2010, I packed up my things, sold what I could, and moved back to the East Coast, back to Boston. And I've been here since. Of course, a lot of other stuff has happened to me that I'm very grateful for. I got the first job I could. I served coffee at Dunkin' Donuts, then Starbucks. I did professional services in an office out in Metro West, out of Boston. Started learning about web development, HTML, CSS, a little bit of JavaScript. Funny enough, when I was doing professional services work for this small company out west, I was there for about a year. Did professional services, and I did a little bit of project management, and after about a year in, I got laid off. I had the right attitude, but especially not having done that professionally, wasn't the best project manager. But I got laid off. I did not get fired. So a little bit of severance, and apparently I made some positive impressions because not my boss or manager, but the guy in charge of technology there, VP of tech, he put my name in the hat with a local recruiting agency. The recruiter said, "Hey, we have it's a 2-month front-end development. It's a junior front-end development contract gig at this digital agency downtown. We want you to come into the office and interview with them." So I did. Beautiful office, so modern, amazing folks I was chatting with. Never gonna get this job. No degree, no experience doing front-end development, just a kid studying nights and weekends with a lot of ambition, but not a ton of experience. Never gonna happen. And maybe a month and a half after I interviewed, got the call saying, "Hey, we want you to contract with us for 2 months. And if you do a good job, we might even give you a full-time gig." And that's how I got into front-end development. So I was there for 4 years, learned every single thing I could, went through the ranks. Digital agencies will do that for you. I finally left this agency, Genuine Interactive, finally left in 2016. I moved over, I did a short stint at Wayfair, and then I moved over to Pegasystems over in Cambridge as a front-end architect, and then lead front-end architect, building out these crazy things called design systems. Did that for 4 years, and then about 2 years ago, I hopped over to the startup life, my current gig as a principal front-end engineer at Knapsack, SaaS cloud platform company, building out design system software for companies large and small alike. That's where I am today. House in Malden, cats, husband, living my life. Honestly, thanks to Common Roads. I had a bunch of help along the ways. Can't underestimate or undervalue just how much help I've had. All the friends, all the support, but all that started with a little youth group in Central Pennsylvania.
That's great. Tell me now, what is your relationship with your family?
I'm assuming this is edited based on what's being kept, what's not being kept, right?
Well, we generally don't edit the videos, so if there's things that you don't want to talk about, then you shouldn't talk about them. But
okay, that's fair. My relationship with my family, my mom and my dad, is about as minimal as you possibly could get and still have something that's technically a relationship. I've been here in Boston for 12 years now. They've never visited me once. Not literally once. We have a house, like got a mortgage, never visited. My brothers have. I actually stay really close with my younger brother, and my older brother, the one who supported me early on, he's always been a support, but he's married, he now has kids. he's busy with his life. So, we've grown a little bit apart, but I still have a great relationship with my brothers. I mean, hell, I came out to my grandma probably 5-6 years ago. I filled her in with some of the details of my whole coming out story, but left out some of the nastier parts. Even her, like, she was even supportive. Of course, Catholic background, Catholic family, tons of reservations and fine print, but all in all, even she was super supportive. My aunts and uncles, I've come out to them since, on my mom's side at least, they've been incredibly supportive. I can't change my background. I can't change my family. I can't change who I am. But I can, hopefully someone who actually watches this or hears about this, like, hopefully there's some parts here that will give them hope, enough hope to keep trying, know that not every place is as conservative, or, not every place can feel quite as isolating as Central Pennsylvania can for the LGBTQ+ community, but there is hope. There are some amazing people even in Central Pennsylvania, and there's other places in the country that are even more progressive, even more warm and welcoming. And up here in Massachusetts, being gay is just not, it's not even a big deal. It's like, it's no deal. It's just, okay, whatever. There are places like this that are incredibly warm and welcoming and accepting. And, even folks that I knew in Pennsylvania, not everyone there is super close-minded. So know that there's hope. Know that there's support networks out there. There's professional mental health services out there. There are so many things to look forward to keep trying, and know that as shitty as things can be sometimes, and as dark as things can get, one experience or situation turns into another, and you never know where it's going to take you. So, family ties, parents, we recognize we are both people, and that's probably the extent of it. The rest of my family's pretty good.
And talk a little bit about your partner, your husband, and what he does, and what your life is like there in Boston. And do you also, are you involved much in the community out there?
So James is one of, if not the most amazing person I've ever met. He's my partner in crime. He's my better half. We definitely complement each other as far as skill set, personality, quirks. It's what I love about him. He's the director of marketing and product at a super tiny startup dealing with kind of real estate. Think like OkCupid type, like matching, but for houses. So, whatever lifestyle and whatever things you're looking for, try to find the right home for you. So he's doing that as his day-to-day job. I'm working at this startup as my day-to-day job, and then we're both working on an escape room business just down the street from us in downtown Malden. We're working really hard. We've been working since June of last year, pretty much, to get the space ready and the different experiences there up and running, hopefully opening up for business in about 2 months. James and I have traveled the country. We've also, traveled internationally on several occasions now. I'm not as involved in the LGBT community, at least. It's weird because when I was in Pennsylvania, like, going to Pride for me was like, it was really important to go to Pride. Here, I mean, of course, like supporting the community however we can is important, but we're like, for me, Pride it's just a party in the summer. Like there's no, we're not like having to stand up for, equality and rights. Like those things are just law here in Massachusetts. I'm very fortunate to be in a situation and in an environment that has that level of maturity and growth. But gay, lesbian, trans, folks, those are just friends, acquaintances. They're just people like everyone else. And I guess in a way, I've sort of outgrown the need to go to like gay events or gay meetups, but that's just because we've gotten to a point of just acceptance.
Well, that's great. Salem, do you have anything else that you want to add that you think we haven't covered that you'd like to cover?
I just wanted to thank everyone who has either directly supported or has just kind of been there in the background. There's so many volunteers at Common Roads that, even just the folks that are like organizing some of the events that they had. There's like a group cooking class one time. I just want to say how much I appreciate those folks helping to make Common Roads a thing. And that plus the Unitarian Universalist Church of Harrisburg, like those were the two beacons of hope I had when I was living in Pennsylvania. And I just wanted to say how thankful and appreciative I am on having that be there for me, and hope that those organizations stick around, because there's so much good that they've been able to do for me, and I'm sure for so many others.
Well, thank you very much, Salem. I appreciate your taking your time to do the interview, and
Of course.
it sounds like your life has turned around quite a bit since the early days, and we're glad for that.
Very different person, but I think all for the best reasons.